Alright, nothing's happened so far. Let's hope something does. Lady Amamine, you have the power to see other memories, do you not? I'd kept my powers hidden from my best friend, Ida. Even my father, about Mr. Hartfield, knew. I sucked in a sharp breath. He was right. I'd had strange powers since I was born. When I touched others with my fingertips, I could see the memories they were thinking hard about or sense their emotions. I confided in my mother, and she told me that I must never tell another soul. Then she handed me a pair of gloves. She said, as long as you don't touch others directly, you should be safe. Wear these at all times. My mother, who gave me that advice, died when I was 3. She took her secret to the grave, never revealing how she knew about this power. I took her words to heart. Ever since, I was stubbornly guarded my secret, wearing my gloves everywhere I went. That's why she wore the gloves. And that earned the revulsion of my father's second wife. My stepmother didn't like the constant reminder of her husband's first wife and confiscated my gloves. That's when I sensed the depth of her hatred. It was the first time I learned that humans could possess such murky emotions. I was crestfallen that my stepmother felt that way about me. I lived my life with caution ever since that day, taking the utmost care to not touch others and hide my unusual power from the world. Because with a single touch I could peer into someone's heart. I would be forced to see everything, that someone's cherished memories, disgust, hatred, and even the truths they wanted to hide. So how did this man learn about it?
どうやら本当のようだね。
Yep.
いえ、それはあなたの思い過ごしです。私にはそんな力なんてありません。
Freak. My stepmother had cowered, her face contorting as she spat the word that still made my heart seize up. That was why I rejected my power. I couldn't handle the thought of being rejected by anyone else. Yet this man gazed at me with what seemed to be respect.
あなたはあの日、私の心の内にある絶望に気づいた。死に場所を求め失意の淵にいた私に、彼女の存在を知らせてくれた。
As if he were reminiscing the sensation of someone's touch, he placed a hand on his own arm.
3年前、パルマの墓地であったのを覚えていないかね。石段を踏み外し倒れそうになった私を、あなたは支えて助けてくれた。
The Parma cemetery rang a bell. When I'd left Japan, my father told me where my Italian grandmother was buried. It was one of the first places I visited. Italian grandmother? I had removed my gloves to pay my respects. I prayed for my grandmother, whom I'd known nothing about, not even what she looked like. Then when I was making my way back, I came across someone who slipped right in front of me. I'd steadied him without my gloves. In that moment, I'd come into contact with the piercing sentiments of intense guilt and despair, emotions that felt suicidal. That was why my mouth had moved faster than my mind, reminding him of the hope that glowed faintly in his heart.
あの時、あなたは私にこう言った。生きてください。奥様と過ごした日々を、約束を忘れてはいけない。とね。
言ったかもしれません。でも、だからって私がそんな力を持っているなんてあるはずが。
私にはね、妻がいた痕跡がないのだよ。
What?
妻がいた記憶も過去も何もない。自分にとって大切な女性がいたかもわからない。だが、微笑む誰かの気配だけはおぼろげに記憶にある。
How's that possible?
それが誰なのかわからない。妻なのかもわからない。生きているのか死んでいるのかすらわからない。ただいつも気がつけばあの墓地に立っていた。誰の墓前に祈ればいいのかさえわからないというのに、ただ大切な何かを失ったという喪失感だけが残る日々を、その理由すらわからないまま生きていたのだよ。 あなたに会ったあの日までは、私にはかつて妻がいたかもしれない。私すら知り得なかったそんな過去の扉を、あなたはあの日、開いて見せてくれたのだ。
How do you forget about your wife? I could have forced a laugh and told him that he was being ridiculous or just joking. I could have said it's a misunderstanding or I was only speaking based on conjecture back then. But his solemn, earnest gaze wouldn't let me. My mouth dried up and I struggled to get words out of my throat.
私は彼女の名前をどうしても知りたい。名前がわからなければ天国で再会することも難しいだろうからね。もちろん私は天国に迎え入れられるような善良な人間ではないから、どのみちそれも叶わないことだろうが、それでも、いや、だからこそ私は知りたいのだ。一人の人として死ねるように。
Why do you wanna die though?
マダム天峰、私はあなたが奇跡の力を持っていることを知っている。
Mr. Hartfield reached out to me as if seeking salvation, as if he'd found his oasis in a desert. But in the end, his hand never grasped anything. Ooh, a gust of wind snuffed out the candle on the table. Mr. Hartfield's body swayed and dropped forward. There was a loud shatter, glass breaking into pieces. Wine spilled forth, dyeing the tablecloth a dark red. No, it wasn't wine. What was that? Huh. The moment felt both like a fleeting second and impossible lifetime. The only thing that I understood when I came to my senses was that Mr. Hartfield, who should have been in front of me, was lying prone on the ground. A scream. That scream. A scream rang out from somewhere. Red wine drenched the floor with a spreading crimson stain. Red wine? No, that wasn't it. It was blood. That startling scarlet finally shook me from my daze. I rushed over it in, the restaurant clamor miles away. A frightening amount of blood flowed out from below his body and spread across the ground. It was hard to believe that so much blood could come out of a body. At this rate, he was going to...
巻き込んでしまってすまない。
そんな、しっかりしてください。
As I gripped his hand, trying to ground him to his world, a scene leapt into my mind. Oh, memories overcame me. This must be the man's memories. A woman with golden hair and a younger Mr. Hartfield. A gentle smile and eyes that held a hint of resignation. One day, somewhere else, somewhere that isn't here, may our feelings that couldn't bear fruit in this life finally be realized. The pair held each other's hands, making an impossible promise. The woman continued to speak to him, her voice warm. Please choose the world you wish for. And the man called her name.
何かが見えたんだね。
Even though he was on the brink of death, Mr. Hartfield strained to look up at me. It was his most desperate wish for the woman he might have once loved. He burned through the last of his life for an answer.
見えたのだろう。何が見えた。
He remembered he just couldn't reach it on his own. That touch of a hand was enough for me to see the depths of his heart.
彼女の名前は。
Determined eyes were fixed on me. Trusting a stranger with the scenes he could not see, he reached out his shaking hand. I spoke as softly as I could.
イライザとあなたは呼んでいました。
イライザ。
He whispered the name to himself, his eyes widened, as if he'd remembered something unbelievable.
ああ、そうなった。イライザ。
His lips trembled and tears traced his cheeks. The look in his eyes told me that he'd managed to regain the treasure he'd once lost. And at last, Mr. Hartfield smiled, so peacefully that it seemed out of place, so kindly that it was hard to reconcile that he was on his deathbed.
ありがとう。おかげで無事に彼女のもとへ。
待ってください、ハートフィールドさん。きっとすぐにお医者様が。
More importantly, didn't he get shot? I frantically clasped his hand, but strength was fading from it at alarming pace. Contented ashen eyes gazed at me, their eyelids slowly sank down.
今度こそ彼女と。
ハートフィールドさん、しっかりしてください。目を。
His hand slipped out of mine and onto the floor. There was no more response to my voice. The shrieks of others, the chaotic footsteps, everything felt awfully distant. No way, he died. We'd been speaking just minutes ago. Now he'd never again reply. My mind couldn't process the reality. The blood seeping into the ground, the screams in the distance, the body that laid motionless. I wish that it was all a movie set, because if it wasn't, I'd be forced to face the truth. A man had died right in front of my eyes.
お嬢さん、大丈夫ですか?
Oh, he's got no eyebrows. Someone called out to me. I turned to the sound in a daze to see a man watching me worriedly. He looks like a hitman, though.
ホテルの人の案内で逃げましょう。殺人事件が起きたのです。犯人が近くにいるかもしれません。
A murderer. Oh, so this was a case of murder. Though his words triggered that thought, the turn of events had left my mind in shambles. I couldn't process anything. The only thing I knew was that I needed to get out of that place. I blankly took the man's offered hand. That instant, I felt a sharp stab of pain. No, this wasn't pain. It wasn't? It was hatred. Oh. Is Mika seeing into his memories too now? It was a swirling, sticky mess of hatred and bloodlust. It reminded me of rotting through. Among those feelings was a shard of self-accomplishment. He died, his heart sneered. I finally finished him. A back stained scarlet. A man gradually collapsing to the ground. A stench of death lingered on his hand. I saw the scene I'd just witnessed from the murderer's perspective. Oh, I can't be. Did this man? Was it this man who killed Mr. Hartfield? On reflex, I flung his hand away. His eyes widened, and he quickly regained his composure and spoke in a kind tone.
どうしましたか?
A reassuring smile took over his face. The hollow, pasted-on smile was horrifying. I clutched my hands and pressed them tightly against my chest.
あなたがまさか。
That was all I said, but the few words I muttered were enough for him to interpret what I meant. His gentle mask cracked open and cruelty oozed out. Ooh.
そうですか。やはりあなたは彼女の力を。
Have her powers. An amused smirk played at his lips, and a chill ran down my spine. I didn't know what was going on, but I needed to get away from him. The moment I stood up to run, there was a stir at the entrance.
動きだ! 警察だ!
The police. I breathed a sigh of relief at the sight of policemen rushing over, but oddly, I was the one they surrounded and seized.
殺人の容疑で拘束させてもらう。
違います。私じゃありません。この人を殺したのは。
Just as I was about to point to the true culprit, I saw that the earlier man had vanished without a trace. Hey, police, can't you even see I don't have a gun? No, he was just here. Though I desperately pleaded my innocence and told the police that the true criminal was still at large, they refused to listen. In the end, I couldn't stop them from taking me away as a suspect.
So, それで君はどうしてあの場所にいたのかね?
A lot of people were there. My questioning began promptly after I arrived at the interrogation room in Rome's police station. Suspicious glare pinned me down. Was I a foreign tourist who'd happened to be present, or was I the murderer?
私はただ友達と待ち合わせであのホテルへ行っただけなんです。けれどそこには友達がいなくて。
なるほど。君はただ呼び出されただけ。見知らぬ男と同じテーブルに座っていたら、突然その男が何者かに殺されたという。
はい。
The word killed triggered my memory of the man's last moments, and fear seized me as if a frosty hand had stroked my heart. Though he'd been a complete stranger, I still couldn't believe that he died before my eyes, and that I was the main suspect. But I'm sure that they'll figure out I'm not the murderer once they start investigating. I lack the weapon and the motive. And if we were in view of the security cameras, they would prove that all I'd done was sit on the other side of the table. The restaurant waiters and guests at the nearby tables could attest to my innocence as well. While praying for a quick release, I spoke honestly about everything I'd seen and heard. But there was a sudden commotion outside, and the door slammed open as men in black suits marched in.
この事件は我々の管轄になった。
Who are you?
出て行ってもらおう。
Huh?
はい。
The instant the detective saw the agents in black, his complexion paled before he practically fled from the room. The agents in black were wearing sunglasses that obscured their expressions from scrutiny. All I could gather was that they seemed more terrifying and frigid than the detective earlier.
死んだ男とは何を話した？
Not pausing to take a seat, one of the agents in black began demanding answers. The pressure he emitted was overpowering, and I nearly cowered. I tightly clasped my shaking hands as I shook my head.
何も話していません。お話しされる前に亡くなってしまいましたから。
I needed to keep my powers under lock and key, but in truth my fear of the agents was what fueled my lie, not my resolve to keep a secret.
ならばなぜ彼がお前に接触した？
何も知りません。あの場所へ行ったのもメッセージで呼び出されたからで、そのメッセージも没収されたスマホを見ればあります。
あの男が何者か知っているな？
知りません。本当に何も知らないんです。
そんなはずはない。聞いたことをすべて話す。
They didn't have any intention of listening to my side of the story. Clearly, they were different from the first detectives. Something wasn't right. I need to think calm down during situations like these. If I remember right, I should.
まずは日本大使館に連絡させてもらえませんか？
Embassy. Before moving to Italy, I was told that during an unjust questioning, I should call the embassy, then a lawyer in my family. However, my request was shot down at once. Unable to contact the outside world, I was forced to face their one-sided, relentless questioning. What do you know? What did you see? What did he say? The same questions repeated like a broken record. The interrogation felt meaningless. Then they decided my fate. They announced that I was sentenced to life imprisonment under charges of murder. I was stuck with the label of murderer for a crime I didn't commit. So that's how she ended up in this place. Bestie. Oh, we're back here.
もうお姉ちゃんたら急に黙り込んじゃってどうしたの？
大丈夫か？顔色が悪いが。
Seeing those two peering into my face snapped me back to reality at once. Right, I was on a prisoner transport vehicle which was taking me and a group of actual criminals to jail.
おいおい、冗談で殺人って言ったつもりだったが、まさか本当に殺人罪で捕まったのかよ。
That's right.
違います。私は誰も殺してなんてないです。
誤解？ってことは、
つまり本当に殺人罪で逮捕されたというわけか。
おいおい、マジかよ。
わお、お姉ちゃん見かけによらず大胆。 誰をやっちゃったの？もしかして彼氏とか？
Why is Sally excited?
本当に違うんです。ちゃんと調べてもらえればわかるはずです。私が犯人じゃないって。
それはどうだろうな。君のこの扱いはすでに被疑者の域を超えている。
だいたい無実の人間がこんな物騒な連中と同じ護送車のわけないだろ。
さっきは自分だって無実だって言ってたじゃん。
ああ、俺は確かに無実さ。でも警察だってそこまでバカじゃないだろう。同じ護送車に2人も無実のやつがいてたまるかい。
そもそもフラン君が無実だなんて思ってないけど、でも殺人者か。本物って初めてかも。お姉ちゃんのサイン後でもらっておこっかな。
These guys really are something.
だから本当に違うんです。
Suddenly, the sound of the van's engine changed. The shaking subsided and it seemed faster too.
どうやらハイウェイに入ったみたいだな。
A highway.
ハイウェイだって。おいおい、一体どこに向かってるって言うんだ。
何？ハイウェイに乗ったらなんか変なの？僕たちが捕まったのはローマですからね。普通に考えればローマを出る必要はないはずです。
ああ、ローマを出るとなるとレビッビアやレジーナ・コエリではない。
Revivia Regina Coeli.
それって何のことですか？
ローマにある刑務所の名前だ。もっともこの車が刑務所に向かっているのならな。
Prisons. Gibbs seemed awfully knowledgeable about the system. I recalled how Frank had called him a regular earlier.
おいおい、ローマのホテルにワインを置きっぱなしなんだ。勘弁してくれよな。一体どこへ連れて行くつもりなんだ。
What is that pose, though?
私にはわからん。運転手にでも聞くんだな。
運転手は答えてくれなさそうですけどね。というか、こっからじゃ運転手に話しかけられないじゃん。覗き窓のシャッター閉まっちゃってるし。
もう乗り心地も最悪だし、手錠も重くて腕がしびれてきたし。
それよりも他の犯罪者と鎖でつないで連行するなんてまるで映画のようですね。逃亡防止なんでしょうか。
Camus fell into deep thought and muttered to himself under his breath. Once again, a peculiar silence shrouded the van. Though we'd all introduced ourselves, these people were strangers to me, and they were criminals. Too scared to speak, I kept quiet. Frank let out a deep sigh, possibly because he found the gloomy silence to be unbearable.
にしても、コソドルにクラッカーに銃の不法所持者に爆弾魔と傷害を起こした不良少年。おまけに殺人犯か。まさに犯罪者のフルコースといったところだな。
ちょっと、サリーはハッカーだって言ってるでしょ。クラッカーって言ったら悪者になっちゃうじゃん。
Cracker.
僕もぜひ愛の地球戦士と呼んでいただきたいですね。僕も大怪盗なんだけど、詐欺師のフラン君。
Yeah, they're all weird.
おい、勝手に人を詐欺師にするな。善良な一般市民だって言ってるだろ。
Average good Samaritan.
フランク・カサノバはそう言うだろう。
なんだい？俺の名前が不満かい？
Do you have a problem with my name, huh?
一体どんな因果でこいつらと運ばれる羽目になったんだか。しかも殺人犯と鎖で繋がれてるだなんて。
冤罪です。
I nearly cowered under Frank's glaring, but I still denied my charges. He didn't seem like he believed me, however. I chewed hard on my lip. I only came to Rome for a fun holiday trip with Ida. How did it come to this? Ida, what did you do? Ida. Thinking of her made me feel helpless. Was my best friend who'd come to Rome with me, safe and sound. Now that I thought back, it had all started with a text from her, but in hindsight, something about it had been off. The tone had been curt, which wasn't like Ida I knew at all, and the contents had been bare bones. Just a map link to the hotel.
このような形でお呼びした非礼をお詫びします。マダム天峰。
So it was Mr. Hartfield. Mr. Hartfield said that he'd summoned me there. Does that mean the text wasn't actually from Ida? Was it like one of those classic phishing scams where a stranger disguised their text as my friends? If that was the case, Ida might have been worried sick about me. I'd gone radio silent with no warning. But for now, I couldn't contact her or even check the text again because all my belongings have been confiscated. I was still struggling to come to terms with reality. I cast my gaze down at the cuffs that were chained to 6 criminals. That was when more trouble struck. Huh?
何かに捕まれ
Uh-oh. First there was a bang of explosion, then the piercing sound of the tire brakes as the van rattled fiercely. Not a moment later, I was flung up as if the van had toppled. Everything went pitch black. Someone's hand reached out and caught me before I slammed into the wall. In a chaos, I lost all sense of up and down. There was a nasty screech as the van frame scraped against asphalt. The car shook violently and slid sideways across the road. What's going on? Though I felt faint, I desperately clung to the clothes of the person holding me so that I wouldn't be thrown around. I lost track of time after that. Eventually, the shaking stopped, replacing by utter silence. In the stillness, the person who'd hugged me and their arms separated from me. The curtain of darkness concealed their identity.
お前たち生きているか
ああ。
痛いお尻ぶつけた
Well,
なんとかね。
looks like everyone's
それよ
safe.
り今のは何だったんだ。
なんだよいきなり。事故つか重いんだけど。ああ、すみません。しかし今の爆発音は。
この匂い。まさ。
I gasp, coming to my senses at Ash's curse. An acrid odor permeated the van. Gasoline. Gasoline?
ガソリンか急いでここから出るんだ
A prayer for small mercies, the rear door was ajar. The impact of the accident had broken the lock. In the aftermath, the door was crooked, and Gib kicked it open. That easily? Spurred on by the fear that the gas could ignite, I scrambled outside to find that, just like we'd assumed, we were on a highway. A sign stated we were 2.5 kilometers from Parma exit. Again, just as we'd expected, we had left Rome. But Parma, we were heading toward Milan. I stood in a daze until there was a tug on my handcuffs. My eyes traced the chain that connected us. No one was running away. Some were even walking closer to the van. What? But the gas might ignite and explode at any moment. I panicked as the group approached the obvious danger, alone in my anxiety.
ちょっともうそんなに引っ張らないでよ
Though Sally puffed out her cheeks in displeasure, she didn't seem scared. In fact, she was scanning our surroundings curiously. Even while handcuffed, Frank stretched with grace. Ash and Camus scrupulously checked the tires and the van frame. As for Giv and Rami, they neared the driver's seat.
うわハイウェイの上って本当に何もないこれじゃあご飯食べられないじゃん
And she's not scared.
こんな時に随分とのんきだな
まあ腹減ったよねってうわ運転手重傷じゃん
I watched Rami, who was grimacing as he peered into the driver's seat. Gib looked in as well, and his face darkened.
これでは助からないだろうな
That's awful. We survived the accident unharmed, so I'd assume the drivers were safe too, but they were gravely injured. The pair unlocked the van through the smashed window before opening the door without hesitation.
警官ではなさそうだな一体何者だ
Through the door, I glimpsed the driver's deathly pale hands and I froze with dread. Did these two have no sense of fear? Gib and Rami didn't seem bothered in the least by the drivers as they calmly searched their pockets and the glove box. Huh.
こいつの鍵はないのか
Frank raised his handcuffs, but Gibb shook his head.
ダメだ。どこにも見当たらない。この男たちは持たされていない可能性があるな。
Gibb tossed something at Frank. It was a large bag.
おっと。これは
Frank caught the bag and opened it. Inside were personal belongings like wallets and phones.
やったサリーのカバン戻ってきたこのカバンかわいいでしょお気に入りなんだ
やれやれ。ようやく荷物が戻ってきたか。
お、僕の仕事道具も発見。
所持品も一緒に運ばれていたということは、本当に刑務所に向かっていたのか。
そんなのもうどうでもいいじゃん。仕事道具が揃ってるに越したことないし。
なんだかお膳立てが揃いすぎててきな臭い匂いがするぜ。
私のスマホもある。
あ、お姉ちゃんそのスマホをしばらく使わない方がいいと思うよ。簡単に居場所を探知されちゃうからね。
それはごめんだな。せっかく自由の身になれたってのに。
I'm finally a free man. Free, does that mean everyone is planning on running away? These people made no moves to call the police or an ambulance. Frank slung the large bag of belongings over his shoulder and turned his back to the van.
とにかく鍵がないんじゃ長居しても仕方ない。荷物を持ってとっとと逃げるぞ。
ちょっと待ってください。これは。
Camus, who'd opened the van hood, widened his eyes.
何か見つけたか。
ええ、普通の次元式の爆弾です。
次元式の爆弾だ。
はい、すでに起爆装置が作動してます。おそらく事故の衝撃で起動したか、
おいおい勘弁してくれよ。お前爆弾魔なんだろ。さっさと止めろって。
僕は爆弾魔ではありません。愛の地球戦士だと何度。
Now's not the time for that.
それで愛の地球戦士には止められるのか。
見た感じ単純な作りなのでもちろん大丈夫。いや、これは無理ですね。30秒切ってますから。
バカ、それを早く言え。逃げるぞ。
These guys, we all grabbed the big bag and sprinted as one. I nearly tumbled with the tugging of my handcuffs as I looked over my shoulder. In the van, one driver's finger twitched. He was still alive. That thought was a glue that froze my feet in place. Sharp pain constricted my wrists. It was a reminder that we were all connected.
何立ち止まってんの？
せめて運転手さんを外へ。
そんな時間はない。
でも
はあ？何寝ぼけたこと言ってる。この鎖で繋がれた状況分かってるのか。善人ぶって俺たちまで巻き込むんじゃねえ。
He was right, but I didn't ever want to see a person die in front of me again. I couldn't leave them, and yet...
無理だ。諦めろ。
Gibb lifted me into his arms and began sprinting. I saw the man in the van's driver's seat. He began to shift slightly, and the moment I caught a glimpse of his hair, there was a deafening explosion. The blast buffeted us violently. Helpless against the force, we were thrown to the ground all at once. I whipped around to see the van consumed by roaring flames. The blazing fire illuminated our stunned faces. Hot winds brushed my hair. Black smoke billowed into the sky. This again. Another person died and I could only watch.
おいおい、こんな話は聞いてないぞ。